And greetings and welcome to episode number 4 of the QCast. My name is Bob Quillman, and I have a very interesting guest I'm thrilled to have with me this evening, Elliot Steinmetz, the head men's basketball coach at Yeshiva University. Elliot, it is great to finally meet you. We've bantered back and forth on Twitter quite a bit. We've chatted on direct message, but it's really great to meet you. Thanks for coming on.
You too. It's exciting to actually see that background, not just on Dave's show, but actually part of it. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So this background, my wife was born in New York and I was born in Chicago. So kind of an homage to our birthplaces. And there you are in New York. So we're going to get into New York and the school. But I tell you, I mean, this is an exciting time for your program. Let's just start right there. There was a wonderful piece in the LA Times about a week ago on Ryan Turell. CNN did a feature on your program and the streak. There was a great piece in the New York Post recently. You've got to just be loving all the wonderful and well-deserved attention that your program is getting right now. Talk a little bit about all that buzz.
So I wasn't always a big fan of it. I still am not, but it does help recruiting. So there is that. But I like to focus on the basketball stuff. And I remember the first time when we won the conference a few years back for the first time, and all the TV stations wanted to show up at practice the next day, and it was just it was a little bit frustrating as somebody who's just kind of trying to focus on the next game to be dealing with that distraction. But I think our guys over the last couple of years have gotten used to it, and it's obviously a good marketing tool for the university as a whole, and obviously for the athletics program. So it's been a lot, and it's definitely overwhelming, and the interest in our program is probably at an all-time high. So these are things I guess I shouldn't be complaining about.
Yeah, it's all because of the success on the floor, and we're going to get into that in tons of detail here during this conversation. But first, I'd like to talk about the university itself. One of the things I love the most about my association with Division III basketball, and the reason probably I started this little podcast deal, is I really appreciate all the people that I've met along the way that I wouldn't have normally met. And I can tell you that this Southside Chicago Catholic Irish guy didn't know much about Yeshiva before Yeshiva started winning basketball games. And I assume a lot of the people that click into this and watch don't know a ton about Yeshiva, a private Jewish university, very selective school, great school. But why don't you talk through, Elliot, a little bit about your alma mater and walk us through Yeshiva, if you would?
Sure. I mean, it is a fascinating place. There's no doubt about it. It's definitely different. You have a wide range of the student body. Certainly in the undergrad, the grad programs are kind of an animal to themselves. But the grad is a unique place. I mean, you have really a range of students from, guys that there's a separate men's and women's school, which I think right off the bat different than every other college in the country, where we have a campus for the men up in Washington Heights, which is up in the top north of New York, north top of New York City, and then you have the women's campus, which is dead in Midtown, I think right on like 34th Street or something like that. And the campuses are separate, that go back and forth, of course, but the campuses are actually kept separate. The men's campus where I spend obviously my time is unique that you have such a wide range in terms of the student body. You have guys who are studying to that are in rabbinic studies, that are studying to be rabbis, super religious Orthodox kids who are taking that next step and want to enter into the rabbinic field, potentially as a career, or as an educator, or in some, and it kind of, there's a big range. You can end up with guys who don't have much of a religious affiliation at all, but maybe they have just some semblance of a Jewish background and feel a certain connection to it, where they want to be at a university that has Jewish studies and has the opportunity to learn a little bit more about their history and their culture. And the university has study and programs for anybody on any level. So really a unique place in that regard. And then obviously we deal with the Sabbath and the Jewish holidays. So our schedule is a little different than the rest of the country, which often plays into scheduling with our games and certainly strategy in terms of trying to figure out how we're going to go about things. We don't have winter break for the same period of time, nor do we have it at the same time that the other schools do. We generally have a break almost right away in October, depending on the Jewish calendar falls out that year, where sometimes we either have to get a waiver from the NCAA to start early because we'll lose the first 2 weeks of practice on October 15th, or have October 15th kind of hit, and then we potentially have a week and a half or a 2-week break right away. So it's just a very, unique place in that regard, not just from the, the personnel and the actual student body, but all across the board in terms of scheduling and kind of the programming at the university.
And scheduling, I assume, just to get really specific, I mean, you guys can't play, of course, on a Friday night or into a Saturday, and that has to be a little bit unique when it comes time to trying to find games and talking to other coaches that may not be aware. And is that something that comes up a lot as you're looking for games and people aren't aware of your traditions and rules?
It is, and I think people are more aware, obviously, now than they were in the past. But it definitely comes up. If we get invited to a tournament, we always have to ask: is there any way we could play Friday afternoon or Saturday night instead of most of them are Friday night, Saturday afternoon? It is an amazing time, obviously, and people are extremely accommodating. Most of the schools that invite us to tournaments are generally offering to accommodate or change schedules for us, which is fantastic and is a great shout out for what D3 is all about. I think come NCAA tournament time, obviously the NCAA has been changing their schedule for us, usually the games, and I think it's kind of led to a staggered schedule over the last couple of years, which I think started with our 1:00 game at York back, to get that afternoon game idea kind of going, which I think has been really great for D3. And then the opportunity to play again, obviously Saturday night in our second when we were able to advance this year. What people don't realize is we don't get the opportunity to prepare in between games, in the NCAA tournament, or if we're in a tournament where we're playing on a Saturday night, we're kind of shut down Friday night and Saturday during the day, where there's, prayer services, there's a meal that takes place, and it's kind of a restful, peaceful day, but we try to avoid any type of work or any type of preparation for something that's coming after that day. So it becomes definitely a unique situation and a little different than I think most people are dealing with.
Let's talk about you for a second before we get into the team. You played at Yeshiva from 1999 to 2002. And I'm just curious, let's start with the process of becoming the head basketball coach. Was that something you pursued? Did the school pursue you? What was the path to making this all happen back? I guess it was April of 2014. How did this all play out?
So I don't know that everybody realizes it, but I'm actually an attorney. I'm a real estate lawyer in New York, and I have my own practice for about 6 years now. And prior to that, I was working as in-house counsel at a mortgage REIT, and before that, I was at a smaller law firm in White Plains. All basketball has obviously been a passion of mine from the time I played in high school and college, and then obviously into coaching at the high school level. But throughout, it's always been kind of a passion that I've been able to have on the side in terms of coaching, high school basketball while I was working full time. When the Yeshiva job came up, it was not something that I initially was going after or applying for. I was actually in a really great spot. I was working at a high school out on Long Island where I was just having a really great, really good kids, and we were starting to win and just having a lot of success there. And it was also happened to be that the president, the founder of the school I was coaching at, was also the CEO of the company I was working for. So I had a kind of a good gig. It's as close as I'll ever get to being a professional coach. Let's put it that way. But it was a good gig. And when the Yeshiva job came up, it was tough because I knew I'd be leaving, what was a full-time job, obviously as a lawyer and good, social security, to take on something where I didn't know what my full-time situation would be. There were a few alumni actually that reached out to me and asked to apply, and I did and went through the process. And when I ended up getting the job, I was thankfully able to convince my current partner at work to ship from her law firm and start our own firm and kind of get that going. So I was able to keep that, same kind of balance between a full-time attorney job and the part.
Kind of similar to the story that Damian Jablonski of Whitworth told me earlier in the week, just from a standpoint of, look, following your passion. If you want to be the head men's basketball coach at Yeshiva, and that's a possibility, we all come to crossroads in our life, and you came to one. And fortunately for all of us, you chose Division III basketball, and I'm sure that's something that you haven't looked back on since.
No, I'm thrilled with the decision on both. From a career standpoint, I love having my own practice, obviously, and I love, the clients that I have. It's, the commercial real estate market is fascinating and interesting, and certainly has had its ups and downs over the last 6 years. And obviously going through the last year and a half was a great experience, whether it was good or bad experience and a learning experience, certainly. And then obviously to be able to coach at this level and to meet, all the people I've met, whether it's media guys or coaches or players and administrators. It's just been such an awesome time the last 6 years in every regard.
And you've had an incredible amount of success in 2017-18, just a few years ago. You won the school's first NCAA bid. You did that again last year. We're going to get into all the success last year, including the postseason before the cancellation. So you have to feel great about that 7 years you've been in the job and watching this thing build and build and build to the point where, again, the Los Angeles Times, CNN, did you envision this moment 7 years ago, April 2014, when you took to the job? Did you see this happening?
Yeah, I absolutely did. I mean, this was what we built our recruiting pitch on. It was something when, I remember one of our first practices 7 years ago, walking into practice. And it's very easy when a new coach takes over for everybody to play hard in that first, those first few practices. Everybody's excited. I think we actually started my first year. I think we started off 9-3, and I don't think we were 9-3 talent, but it was enough that Dave put me on his show, and everybody was excited about it. And then I think we were somewhere close to 500 basically the rest of the way, and we didn't necessarily have the horses. And I don't think I had the coaching experience to kind of handle a prolonged season like that at the college level. And that's something that, I try to kind of get better at every day. And I know our players work hard, obviously, as well to get better. But I remember walking into a practice where I felt like we were starting to lag a little bit and saying to the guys, hey, guys, this is year one. No longer striving for mediocrity. That's not going to be acceptable. So if you guys aren't on board for, striving for winning this conference, going to the Final Four, then we're just going to over you. And it might sound like a little bit of a harsh line, but we'll still use it to this day. But it's facts. I mean, the bottom line is, I remember talking, in an interview early on that first year, and somebody asked me what my goals were, and it was very simple. I mean, win the conference, go to the NCAA tournament, get the score, and compete for a national championship. And I get that it's 80 years and Yeshiva's never been there, but if we're not striving for goals like that, then what are we doing in this business? What are we doing in competition and in this sport in general? The point is to win. And we want to try to win every single day. So, it became about trying to recruit the best players we could find that were good fits for us at Yeshiva. It was about me maturing as a coach a little bit and trying to, learn how we could compete at this level and in the right way. And then obviously, most importantly, how we can represent our university in a positive way.
It's interesting you say that about kind of developing as a coach. I think a lot of people assume that players are the only ones that develop and that coaches are this finished product. But I know in talking to Illinois Wesleyan coach Ron Rose, he says all the time how much better he is now than he was 13, 14 years ago. I guess that's something that as a coach you're just constantly evolving, just like a player does over that 4-year career.
Yeah, we try to preach to our guys about getting better every single day, and it applies to us as coaches as well. And there's no doubt I'm worlds more mature as a coach today than I was, certainly 6 or 7 years ago. I think I'm more mature as a coach today than I was a year ago. And we were having success a year ago. If I'm not moving forward, I'm moving backwards. And there's certainly still a lot to learn. I try to forge relationships wherever I can with coaches more experience than me, whether it's at the D3 level, high school level, or higher levels, and learn as much as I can every single day, and just try to find ways to put my guys in a position to be successful.
Let's talk a little bit about last season, then we'll kind of come into this season and talk about some other things. What a year for you guys last season. Unbelievable. You finished, was it 29-1, 16-0 in the Skyline. You got to the NCAA tournament. You won 2 games in blowouts. We'll get into those. It's interesting. You started your season last year. I believe it was the first game that you went out to. Was it Occidental? Was that the first game of the year? Correct. So
Yep.
Occidental, you lose. And those road trip games like that where you're going across country, I've been on a lot of those with Illinois Wesleyan. You never quite know what's going to happen on those. What happened in the Occidental game? Obviously, the rest of the season you just rolled. What was kind of your take on what happened out in that one out west?
Well, we came into that game obviously very excited. We thought we had a chance to have a really, really good year, and we were very, very confident, and we got punched in the mouth by a pretty good team. No doubt they came out and defended. They made shots, and we didn't. For us, I think it was obviously you lose and you learn. It was a great experience for us, and we had the opportunity, thankfully, to turn around and play the very next day. Not even close to 24 hours later. I think we played an 8:30 game Saturday night, and I think a 12:30 or a 1 o'clock game on Sunday afternoon. So it was a very quick turnaround, which I think was at that point good for us, because it wasn't physical adjustments that needed to be made at that point. It was really mental adjustments. We had kind of everything in place in terms of what we wanted to do, and we just had to shift our mentality a little bit as a unit and as a team towards that we not me mentality. And I don't mean it in a way of selfish versus selfless. I mean it more in the regard of selfless, from unselfish to selfless. We don't have any selfish guys, thankfully. We have a bunch of guys who are always looking to win. But to us, there is a very big difference between looking for your shot to help your team, which is an unselfish attitude and certain attitude in a lot of places, to what we're trying to do, which is find your teammate the best shot to help your team win, which we look at as a selfless attitude. And I think we made a shift literally overnight, and then never lost it again.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, that's the last basketball game that Yeshiva University men's basketball has lost, and we'll talk a lot about that. Talk about the Skyline Conference. That's a league that I'm not very familiar with, coming from kind of the central region part of the country. And I've been associated with Division III basketball long enough to know a lot about several conferences, but I don't really know a lot about the Skyline. You went 16-0 in the league last year. I do know that not every game was a blowout. You were in some very close games. In fact, I watched a lot of those. Talk a little bit about that league and how it was going through the season last year and coming out of it 16-0.
I thought our league was really good last year, and I think our league doesn't get a fair shake, and I don't know if it's something that's a little bit historic or if it's a bias of some kind. I know there's a lot of great teams out there, believe me, and I've seen some of them obviously out in the Midwest play, and there are some terrific basketball teams, but our conference last year was tough. I mean, we struggled in some games at the bottom of our conference. I just think that we have really good coaches in our conference who recruit well. There are some tough teams out there. We played a pretty tough schedule last year out of conference, and we struggled. For the most part, we struggled a lot more in conference than we did conference. Skyline's been a great opportunity for our guys in terms of obviously having an automatic bid, sitting there at the end, and just in terms of preparing us and getting better throughout the year. We always talk in the beginning of the year of what games can we schedule so that we can be playoff and tournament if we were to get there. And we're always talking about what non-conference games, and the truth is nothing has prepared us for the NCAA tournament and for postseason. Conference prepares us. So I know it doesn't get the greatest of honors out there and the greatest looks in terms of where it ranks. But you look back at last year and some of the non-conference games that some of the teams in our conference played, and the successes they had and the wins they had, our conference did pretty last year.
When you think about the end of the conference tournament last year, heading into that weekend, I don't know how much you pay attention to stuff that's out there on Twitter or Hoopsville or wherever, but there was conversation that I thought pretty fair conversation about what would have happened had you lost in your conference tournament championship game. And you would have had a resume that was something like winning percentage over 900, a strength of schedule under 500, which is historically no one's ever gotten a pool C with that number, and no games against regionally ranked. So a 0-0. No one's ever had a pool C with those numbers. Were you aware at all that there was that kind of like question, I'll say it, not necessarily were you aware of the conversation, were you aware that it wasn't quite a lock? You may have gotten in, I guess you probably would have with that winning percentage, but did you feel like in the event that you lost that there was some dicey moments ahead of you there? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I'll make it simpler. I don't think we would have gotten in. I think based on the seeding we got in the NCAA, that we would not have gotten into the tournament. And I'm not sure if it's right or wrong. I mean, look, I thought you did a great job last week explaining it with who was it? With
Mike Shower.
With Coach Shower, yes. I emailed him afterwards and thanked him for trying to explain it, because it was educational for me as well to kind of really understand that system and how it works. It's very, very numbers based, and even before that, going in the last couple of games, we kept kind of saying to ourselves, hey, as coaches, what's going to happen here? We're at 28-2 or 27-2. We still have a shot, and our non-conference SOS was pretty good, but obviously the SOS overall was not. Regionally ranked, you could throw out the window, because unfortunately most of those teams won't play us. But we didn't have the opportunity to kind of go and compete in games like that. But we did not think we were going to get in without the automatic bid, and based on how we were kind of looked at from a rankings perspective based on the numbers, we knew good enough, but we did not think we were gonna kind of mathematically get in without that win. And the NCAA seeding committee, who seeded it, and the committee, when they seeded us, kind of made that clear. They put us in a situation, I think, where we were probably the 3 seed in our pod. I don't know what that would equated to overall, but we certainly were a bubble team for them at best.
And then at that point, so it didn't matter. There was no drama because you won your conference tournament. And at that point in time, looking from the outside, I was still like bubble on the Yeshiva bandwagon at that point. I was bubble in, let's say, on the bandwagon. Other people tried to tell me that you guys were way better than I thought you were. People like Ryan Scott and Dave McHugh. And I had watched you a lot, and I still wasn't quite sure where you fit in nationally. Like if you played Wisconsin Platteville, how does that go? And I was interested to see how the NCAA tournament games went. You got sent to Johns Hopkins, and you go there, and on Friday you roll over a really good WPI team. That was the first game, right? WPI. Mm-hmm. And then the second game you roll was it Penn State? Sorry, which Penn State was
Harrisburg.
it? Penn State, Harrisburg. You win both of those games by 20 plus. Neither was close for very long. And as an outsider, I watched both of those games, and that was the moment where I realized A, how good Ryan Turell was, B, how good Gabriel Leifer was, C, how well you guys play as a team, and I guess D, just how good Yeshiva was. That was probably an eye-opening moment for people that didn't know you guys. You had to feel really good coming off of that first weekend last year and how you guys played.
We did. I mean, again, we felt very prepared for those games going in. We were excited for them. We had obviously done our work and watched a lot of film as a coach, but also as a team. And we were confident about those games going in, and we knew we were playing good opponents, and there would be, we did not expect to shoot the way we did or to execute the way we did. We did expect to defend the way we did, which I thought we did a good job. But there's no doubt going in that question that was in everybody's mind was, partly in ours as well. But we talk about it now and afterwards, and how, people don't realize how close we were to not playing those games. Not just from a university standpoint, but even from an NCAA standpoint. I mean, we're lucky D3 is lucky we got the weekend in, because obviously the other tournaments never got off the ground. And then even as the university, with everything that was going on at the time, we're lucky we were able to get those 2 games in. And to me, it changed the trajectory of our program, and also, of Ryan Turell's career a little bit, in terms of being able to be out in that spotlight and for people to actually see we already knew.
Seemed like that was the moment where you could equate it to Division One when new programs hit the scene. I'm sure 20 some years ago, there was a lot of us that didn't believe in Gonzaga.
Right.
Maybe now that's Loyola Chicago, after a couple appearances now, maybe they're that, I think that those were the eye-opening games for Yeshiva that told people, yes, this team's for real. They can play with anybody. And you were slated then in the Sweet 16 to go to Ashland, Virginia to play powerhouse Randolph-Macon, great team, All-American guard Buzz Anthony. Again, I was really excited about that game because now that's another level of game. Let's see how Yeshiva stacks up now at this next level. And that's when everything fell apart.
Right.
Where were you as a team, like physically, where were you when you found out that game was canceled?
We were in the parking lot at the hotel. We pulled in. So I actually was pulled in, and I drove separately. So I had just pulled into the parking lot. The bus was probably about 10 minutes behind me. We kind of saw it coming, I think, because we were, watching, obviously the night before, you're watching the news and you see Rudy Gobert test positive and the NBA shut down. And you saw, I think that morning already, then the ACC had canceled their tournaments. And I think Major League Baseball had already postponed. So you started to kind of see the writing on the wall. I remember driving down a 7-hour drive from Long Island. And I was driving down the whole time, and I kept trying to check Twitter whenever I was like slowed down in traffic or, any kind of news source to see if the announcement had come out yet. And I kept saying to myself, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to pull into the parking lot and it's going to come out from the NCAA and they're going to cancel. And we were just kind of hoping we'd get more a day just to play that game because we felt good about it. We were confident. We were excited about it. It was a great opportunity for us, obviously, program-wise, and I'm sure Randolph-Macon felt the same. They had the same confidence and excitement about it. So we were kind of hoping to get that one more day in, and then we pull into the parking lot and the tweet comes out from the NCAA canceling.
And really that was the start of all this to me, that week and that moment when the tournament was canceled and the NBA and all of the things that happened in that stretch of 24 hours. I can't imagine how devastating that was for your guys. And was there a sense when you had to go tell them when that bus pulls in the parking lot? I assume that just how does that play out? How do you tell your team what's just happened?
So they knew because they're obviously sitting on the bus on their phones, so they all knew coming in. Did as we had them all kind of get settled in their rooms and check in, and then we had them all come down for dinner. There weren't really words. There was nothing to say, and you always draw from experience when you have a conversation about any kind of adversity. When I talk to my guys, even before a game, you're always drawing on experience you've done in the past. There's nothing to draw from here. There's no past experience. Usually a season ends three ways, right? You either you stink and you don't make the playoffs, you just go home at the end of the regular season, which happens to everybody at some point, or you make the playoffs and you're a pretty good team and you try to get as far as you can, but at some point you get beat by somebody better. You're dealing with that kind of bitter feeling of losing and what went wrong, or you're that one team that just goes all the way and you get to celebrate the whole off season. And we just had none of it. There was none of that to kind of draw from and have that conversation. I know what to say when we stink. I know what to say when we lose, and I know what to say when we win. I don't know what to say when nothing happens. So it was just a very bizarre kind of feeling sitting in there eating dinner, and guys started to book flights home, and then like within a how serious the whole thing was. And people are sick and people unfortunately were passing away. The economy goes down the toilet. People are losing jobs, and suddenly kind of perspective kicks in. And that's the moment when I really had something that I could say to my guys, and I was able to kind of reach out to them at that point virtually, and give them a speech about what they that year, and the importance of perspective, and how life is so much bigger than basketball, and the world will always find ways to show us that. And just the latest example of it.
Yeah, that's really well said. I think in the last year, if we've all learned one thing or gained one thing, it has been more perspective. Extremely well said. And it's a shame. I guess you could say this any year, but the bracket was awesome at that point. You guys were going to play Randolph-Macon. I think you were in a quadrant with Mount Union, and they were rolling out my way. I was really looking forward to seeing Elmhurst, Pomona, Pitzer, WashU, North Central. Whitworth was going to play Swarthmore. All these games, like the bracket was so unique and interesting the way it was constructed to have Whitworth flying into Swarthmore, for example, to have you guys going to Randolph-Macon, to have Pomona Pitzer flying to Elmhurst. But perspective, right? Because the world changed. And like you said, it became very real.
Yep.
And you guys being in New York, which was at that point, and for many months, the epicenter of the pandemic. I mean, you guys were seeing real world stuff all around you. What was it like to be right there in New York during all this the last 12 months?
It was almost like one of those zombie movies. I mean, it was surreal. It was very, very, it's hard to explain, but it was, you'd walk around the, and you almost like everyone you looked at, you just looked at them differently all of a sudden. And it was quiet, and, places were just empty. The city was a ghost town, still is compared to what it's, like, usually like, although it's picked up a little, thankfully. But yeah, I mean, perspective, like you said, it hit hard and fast, and suddenly within a few weeks, everybody knew somebody who was either in the hospital or had passed away, and it was a very, very, like, and it was quick how it was, like, just so quick how everything escalated, and it became an opportunity a little bit for us to kind of use the excitement from the season. People were still kind of drawn to, and people were still kind of like reaching out and talking about, as a distraction, as a positive way to kind of reach out to, whether it was kids who were looking for virtual clinics, or different outlets that were looking for some sort of a speaker, or some sort of podcast. But it was an opportunity to really kind of spread positivity, during that time, and have perspective on what we accomplished and what was going on in the world, and try to kind of use it for good. So that part of it, I thought, was beneficial, and really good for our guys in terms of like a lesson for life.
I want to talk about your All-American, one of your All-Americans. You have two, which is unique, but I want to talk about Ryan Turell for a few minutes. Then I want to get into this season, and we'll talk about some more about your team. But boy, Ryan Turell, first team All-American last year on D3hoops.com's team. And I had a chance to watch him quite a bit last year. I watched most of your games this year. And, there's a lot of D3 superstars that are D3 superstars, meaning that I watch them and I say, they are the perfect D3 All-American, but they couldn't do it at the next level. We had a player of the year in Division III in 1997, Brian Crabtree, one of the best Division III players I've ever seen, 6'7", small forward. Brian would have struggled to guard the three at the NBA level. He played in Europe for many years. He wasn't quite at that, and he probably would have struggled at the high major Division I level. I think with Ryan Turell, I haven't yet seen anything that he couldn't do on the games that are on TV right now, the Division I games, because he's 6'7", he is lightning fast, he's a combo guard, and he truly has point guard skills. He can shoot the heck out of it. He can shoot the heck out of it from three, from the mid-range. He can get to the basket. Boy, what a weapon. Talk a little bit, if you would, about Ryan Turell.
And he's a selfless kid, hard worker, and a great passer. He's really got it all. I mean, there's no doubt we lucked out getting that kid to come here. He had a lot of offers to go take scholarships and go play Division I. He's had opportunities since he's been here to leave and transfer. This is what him and his family decided was best for him, and it's been a great fit, and I think a great fit for him. Just a tremendous kid all around. Obviously his abilities on the court, I think people have gotten to see, and yeah, I think he could do it at any level. And he spends his off seasons, he spends working out with guys at higher levels. He works out with NBA guys. He plays in LA with NBA and D1 guys, and he more than holds his own. So with a kid who works that hard and has the ability he has, and the IQ he has, the drive he has, people ask, especially with all the articles that have come out recently, people always really they always ask, oh, really? Could he really? I don't doubt anything he wants to do anymore. If he puts his mind to it and he's willing to work for it, I don't see any reason why he can't, follow his dreams and achieve whatever goals he puts in front of himself.
And I think you'd agree, he has a long way to go developmentally to be able to get to that level, to the NBA. But he's way further along than Duncan Robinson was. And it's kind of an interesting comparison because they both have the same build. They're both kind of 6'7" and thin. The difference being though is that Ryan is a 1-2, whereas Duncan Robinson was purely a wing, purely a three. He wasn't a guy that could bring the ball up the floor, wasn't terribly comfortable with the ball in his hands. He's a shooter, whereas Ryan does a lot of different things. I'm not saying that he projects out better than Duncan because Duncan got so much better to be able to go play at Michigan,
Right.
but he does have all the tools to make a pretty good run at it if he wants to. Do you feel like, does Ryan want to make that push to try to play in the NBA? Do you see that being in his future, like trying?
So I don't know how much thought he's given to it in that regard. I do think he'll have the option to, certainly, get an opportunity somewhere, whether it's a summer league invite or, we've had reach out. We've had NBA guys reach out about him. He's got a couple of years left, thankfully, so I'm not sure he's kind of focused on it as of yet. But I do think the skill set is there, and certainly he'd have to modify his game like anybody does when they raise a level. You have to kind of focus in on the things that you do really well that fit at the next level. But if there's anybody who can continue to improve, I mean, people don't realize the improvement level that this kid has gone through, and he was excellent as a freshman. Right, he led our conference in scoring. I think all 3 years that this year didn't really have a conference, but he would have led our conference in scoring basically all that he's been playing. But people don't realize the progress of and how quickly he's improved each year. If you go back and look at video years ago or even from last year versus this year, there's a different frame of a body. He puts the work in the weight room, not just on the court. And there's a different release point now in his shot, and it's improved tremendously. But it also gets off quicker now. So all those little things that he spends time on and improves on, it just adds to the trajectory of what his ultimate projection is going to be. And that's why I said I don't doubt that kid ever, because I've seen him put in the work, and I see what he does every year to kind of make himself better, so that when he comes back, he's just a different player completely.
Yeah, I agree. He's a unique talent for sure. I mean, he is. I hope people get a chance to watch him next year because he truly is a very unique Division III talent. The other guy that I want to ask you about is Gabriel Leifer, and as good as Ryan Turell is, I believe the most valuable player on your team is Gabriel Leifer. He's a 6'6" forward. He plays the 5 for you, and he is an amazing facilitator from the low post. I mean, he is a great passer. He knocks down, he's not a scorer necessarily, but he scores like 16 a game. He can shoot the 3. He can score with his back to the basket. But again, I use the word facilitator because from that low post position, he is an amazing distributor. Talk a little bit about your senior Gabriel Leifer.
He's probably the highest IQ player I've ever coached. Great hands, obviously, just unbelievable awareness. I remember when I was recruiting him in high school, and I was talking to him at one point, and I said, I think he had come off of a game like a couple of days before where he had gone for like 35 points. And I said, Gabe, tell me, what do you think this impressive part of your game is? And he's like, I had 35 points the other day, and I think I took good shots, and I was able to really, kind of dominate low and stretch out the floor and make some threes. I said, that's great. I said, there's a lot of, there not a lot of guys who can score 35, but there are a lot of guys out there who can score 30 at the high school level. There was one thing that I had seen him do consistently that was just so impressive to me, and it was as simple as grab a rebound and throw a perfect outlet pass 60 feet down court, like just on a nail, like to a guy, hit him in the hands, and the guy's just ahead for a layup. And he wasn't playing with superstars. He was some pretty good players, and that kid didn't lose a game his senior year. I think he was like 35-0 as a senior in high school. And he's not doing dissimilar things since he got here. He's a winner, and he just makes everybody around him better, and he doesn't care how he does it. So if there's a game, where we're struggling offensively, he'll pick up the slack and get 30. If there's a game where kind of somebody else is going, he'll make sure that guy is getting going all game long. You look at the NCAA tournament last year, and going for, I don't remember, 40 something and 30 something in 2 games. Who's picking up all those assists? Gabe's out there facilitating, and when he's not getting the assist, he's getting the hockey. He's setting something up. So I've just never been around the kid who really does not care for a second how many points he scores, and even more so, I think he really in his mind equates points, rebounds, assists, and I'll go further. I think he equates good screens with all of those statistics as just as important as the other stats. And when you play that way and you have the ability that he has and the vision and the awareness of what's going on the court, he sees things we don't see. Like I'll look at film and see him make a pass, and it's something that looks so simple sometimes. I was looking at a game from this year early in the season where I was watching. He led a guy on just a very, very simple bounce pass from the wing to a cutter going to the basket, and just the way he threw it and the way the guy to his lead hand and hit him right in the hands, it made the shot a better shot. And there's not a lot of players who can do stuff like that, and he's unique in that way.
And he had a really big shot in your win at Rochester, which was a tough game and it was close. And there were a couple other big shots that kind of sealed that win, but he hit a shot when you really needed it. When things were, I think it was probably tied at the time. I think his shot was made it up 3. He's not afraid to take big shots. He also is not afraid to make a big pass in the big moment either. He's always looking for people. I'm very impressed with Leifer. Let's talk about this season just a little bit. It was a tough season, obviously, playing through a pandemic, and I've talked to Ron Rose about that, and Damian Jablonski and Mike Schauer. So I won't ask you all the questions about COVID protocols, and we know how difficult this season was on everyone. Scheduling, though, you're already in a difficult scheduling situation. You've talked about that. There are teams that you'd like to play that won't play you. I think that's fair to say, correct? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you struggle to find games, right?
100% true.
So then this year comes around, maybe in a weird way, this year made it easier to find a couple games because of what was going on. How did you come across the games against Rochester and against St. Joe's of Connecticut?
So as soon as we got the go ahead, initially when the season was starting, it was conference only. That was the rule. Once conference play fell apart and the Skyline obviously canceled or shut down, our school gave us the okay to start scheduling non-conference games. We literally just called everybody. I mean, we went down. I think we went on d3hoops.com and we went a regional list of anybody who was within like a couple hundred miles. And just one of our associate athletic directors, Greg Fox, who I think we owe this entire to in terms of having any games. Him and I basically just started emailing coaches, athletic directors at every school we could that was in the region, that was in the area, that was in the next region over, asking, hey, we'll come to you. Will you come to us? You want to go, home and home? Whatever we needed to do to get games, we were willing to do. The St. Joe team actually, they actually reached out to us first, which was great. They were certainly on our list, obviously, but maybe we had reached out to them earlier on before they knew if they were playing. But thankfully, as soon as they found out they were playing, they reached out to us, and we were able to schedule that home and home, which was great for us. They're a very, very quality team. I think had they gotten to play a little bit more this year, you probably would have seen them in that top 15 very quickly. They're very, very talented. After those games, I think it was Ryan, Turell. I mean, those are probably 2 of the toughest games we've played in the last few years. Rochester was the team that we had reached out to early on, and they were very willing to play, which was great. And they had their own protocols they were dealing with. I think they were not allowed to play in their home gym, but they also weren't allowed to travel outside a certain amount of mileage. We were willing to travel, so once they were able to secure the arena, we jumped on a bus. I think it was about 5 hours each way, same day trip, because we were trying to avoid ice and get that game in. But we really were going all out. We were reaching out to Division I teams, Division II teams. We were supposed to play St. Aquinas a couple of times this year, and between COVID and their scheduling, neither game ended up working out. Hopefully, we'll be able to pull that one together next year. But this was just we were taking anything. I mean, I think I put it out on social media at one point. We'll play anybody. And it wasn't a cocky statement. It was, please, we just want to play basketball. We at one point actually scheduled a semi-pro team. We were going to schedule an exhibition game with a semi-pro team, but their COVID protocols didn't ours, so the game didn't work out. But we just wanted to play. So I'm not very big on I know the SOS stuff is important, and I know obviously the wins and losses are important. This is supposed to be an experience for our student athletes, and the opportunity for them to play the best games they can possibly play is of the important. I could care less about what my win-loss record is. It's nice to get wins because I'm a competitive person, but throughout the 7 years that I'm here, I've been trying to schedule all the games we could, and I'm sure it cost me plenty of losses those first few years when I could have been scheduling lower level competition and racking up wins. But I think ultimately it's been a better experience for student athletes and for the guys who I recruited and brought here, telling them we're going to build this thing and try to get better. So it's something that I'll always do, to schedule the best possible competition we can, and hopefully other teams are willing to play.
Yeah, and those games were great from a fan's perspective, and as someone that votes in the top, I guess this year was the top 15 poll, because coming into the year, I had a preseason top 25 thing going, and I had St. Joseph, Connecticut in like the 10 range, and Rochester was going to be a top half UAA team, somewhere in there, third, fourth, somewhere at least, maybe better. It was great to see you guys face such good competition, because that made it easier to evaluate where you fit into that national picture. There were a lot of really good teams playing this year.
Yep.
Not everyone had a chance to play great competition, but you guys went out and found Rochester, you found St. Joe's twice, and it really made it for cool games. I think I watched all three of those games, and it was great to see teams finding games like that. As you look, Elliot, to next year, your schedule, I guess one game we can talk about for sure that I'm aware of is, what a cool matchup. Illinois Wesleyan from the Central Region traveling to New York to face your squad in late December. That's a pretty cool matchup. Talk a little bit. I know you haven't had a chance to dig too much into that, but the matchup with Illinois Wesleyan next December.
I could not be more excited for that game. We'll have obviously a lot of them that I got to focus on before we get to it. But, the fact that we, are able to team like that has the history it does in college basketball and obviously in Division III, with the program they have, the players, the coach they have, just in the overall, it's a major D3 program, and it's something that we are aspiring to become. And the opportunity to kind of have them come play with us, play with us at our gym, is really, I think, awesome. And I give them a lot of credit for doing it. And we'll be returning obviously and going back the following year, which I'm excited for that trip too. But I think most importantly, the experience and the educational aspect of it is tremendous. It's very, very different culture. It's going to be guys from completely different backgrounds that I think we'll hopefully have an opportunity to meet and talk a little bit outside of the game itself. And then obviously the ability to on the court and play that high of a level of competition, I think is going to be awesome for both teams. But I'm super excited for our schedule next year. But that game has got a big asterisk next to it.
And like you mentioned, you're making the return trip, so you're going to go to Bloomington, Illinois, which is always an exciting place to be in the winter. Let me tell you, it's always about 72 degrees. Trust me. You're going to play in the Jack Sikma Hall of Fame tournament. I know that Ron is going to have a phenomenal field. So he's the field lined up for this coming year, which they're going to announce soon, is incredible. It will be the year after when you're there, and you guys make it an incredible field. So I think everyone associated with the Titans is so excited about that matchup. And certainly we've got a lot to get through before we can talk about that game, but that's going to be a really fun one. Your schedule next year.
And help our SOS.
It will help your SOS tremendously. Yes. As long as we win some ball games, right? You need us we got to root for each other after that game. That's how this works.
It'll be fine.
You watched a lot of games this year. We've talked a little bit, and you were interested in knowing who the players were out there. I think you've watched some Trine and Randolph-Macon and Illinois Wesleyan. Not to get too much into that because you're just watching streams here and there as you have time, but any takeaways from the national picture this year from the games that you were able to watch?
Yeah, it's funny. I guess because of the lack of, that we got to play this year, it was a little bit more time when we weren't preparing for whatever the next game was to kind of check out some of the other teams that were playing, certainly top teams, that were ranked around the country, kind of see what's out there. I mean, I just overall, and I think it increases every year. I'm so impressed with the level of play at the Division III level. There's so many players out there who can just flat out play basketball. And people don't understand sometimes how hard it is to win one college basketball game, just one college basketball game. I mean, we had to go play Rochester, and that team is as well coached team, as big a team, and as a talented team as we've played. In my 7 years, they were terrific. And I can't even imagine what it's like having to bang with those guys, multiple times a week in the UAA. It's thankfully not something that we have to deal with from a size perspective. But it's to me, it was eye-opening to see how much talent there was around the country on a year where, think about how many good teams aren't playing.
Right.
Swarthmore's not playing. Hopkins isn't playing. There are a lot of teams out there with a lot of talent that were just not even playing. The UAA, obviously, in general,
The NESCAC,
wasn't playing. The NESCAC wasn't playing. Right. Williams wasn't playing. The NESCAC, all those teams in the NESCAC weren't playing. So just to go and see a team like Trine, for example, who I got to watch a little bit, and I know they didn't have the result they wanted, obviously, in that last game. But if you watch them throughout the season, the way they move, the way they defend, the energy level those guys play with, and then the athleticism, with the bigs inside, and a couple of guys who could really, really shoot it. They were exciting to watch and a lot of fun. Illinois Wesleyan, I told you a few times I got to watch, and I just thought the depth and the talent that they have, it's almost like, it's almost like you can't tell them apart because they can all play. Like there's so many guys who can do so much on those teams. Macon, I've been watching, obviously now. I watched a lot of them last year, certainly towards the end of the year as we, got ready for that game, but I got to watch them a couple of times this year. What's impressive about a team like that is just the way Coach Merkel has them playing, the consistency. Like they're so consistently good at what they do. They make so few mistakes and they defend so well. So I think it was very, very cool for me as a coach and as a fan to kind of get to watch these other top teams play a little bit. There were other teams I got to see, and I'm not trying to leave anybody out. I saw Marietta a couple of times, who I thought was awesome. But just to see the level of play in Division III, it was exciting. And it made me kind of miss the fact that there was no tournament this year even more. Because it would have been an opportunity to maybe play some of those teams, but obviously even more so to get to watch a lot of those teams play at that time of year, which would have been exciting.
Yeah, and I can't wait for the tournament next year to get to see how you guys stack up. Because we didn't get to see you advance last year. We didn't get to see some of these cool matchups. If there's a question I have about your team is when you get stacked up against the CCIW or WIAC team with all these 6'7" and 6'8" guys. And, Gabe Leifer is there at 6'6". But then again, all of those teams are going to have a huge Ryan Turell problem.
Everybody does.
Right. And so you talk about X's and O's just being cool is watching you guys square off against, a central region team. I hope we get to see that in the tournament next year. And I know we're going to get to see it in December. So that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Just a couple more things as we finish this thing up. One thing I've learned in getting to know your program a little bit and getting to know some of your fans and even players and parents, what I didn't know before is that you guys are playing for a lot more than your little fan base right there. There is intense coverage of you across the greater Jewish community in the world. That's not an overstatement. Could you talk a little bit about how much this means to people, not only in the United States, but all over the world, and what you're doing and how much focus there is on your team right now?
I got an email, I think yesterday, from somebody I've never met in Israel, that they have a group of alum that live there and a group of other basketball fans that watch every game together, either on Zoom or when it was allowed to in person last year, whatever it was, they get together and watch games, and just saying thank you for, and asking you to pass it along to the team. Just thanking them for the entertainment, obviously, and the pride that they've given them by going out there and competing as Jewish athletes, at the level that they've done it. So it's interesting. I don't ever want to equate us to a Division I program, but in that regard, we are similar in terms of a fan base and in terms of even just the issues we deal with from an eligibility standpoint, of not even eligibility standpoint, but from a violation standpoint, in terms of having to ask so many questions. Can our players do this in this speech? Can our players talk to a group of high school students in a Jewish school? It's the requests that we get for our guys to be doing different things, whether it's coaches or players, is not probably the usual in Division III, and a very large part of it is obviously the larger Jewish community has kind of tied themselves into what we're doing on the court. So you'll see it. I hope, please God, that it's normal next year and you're able to get to the game. And we have some sort of a normal situation in terms of the crowd. Our games are packed, and I'm talking regular season games. It wasn't always like that, obviously, but probably more than the usual in Division III. For the last few years, our games are packed. I mean, you cannot get in if you're late, and it's just a wild thing. I mean, I remember last year, regular game towards the end of the year, they had people waiting in the hallway to get in. Tournament, once the conference tournament came around and they were selling tickets, they sold out in under 3 minutes. So it's just it's a very, very unique environment there, and it's rowdy. The fans sing. They'll sing Hebrew songs. They'll sing songs. It's a ton of fun, that's for sure. But there's no doubt I hear from random countries. I didn't even know there were Jewish people in those countries, and I get emails from people. I got last year from a family in Alaska that watches all our games. So it's definitely exciting and a lot of fun. But there's no doubt there's a big following out there.
And I saw a tweet right before we came on the air here. It was I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was basically a guy thanking you because his little son was out shooting baskets, and instead of making the last second shot for the New York Knicks, he was making the last second shot for Yeshiva. And boy, stuff like that is kind of why you play the game, right? I mean, that talk about perspective, right?
100%. Yeah.
The streak, and then we'll close this up, and then I'll give you a chance to say any final words for the folks listening here. But the streak's at 36, I believe. Is that right? Do I have it right? 36?
I think so. Yeah.
That's good. That's good that you don't.
I'm gonna pretend like I don't know exactly.
29 plus 7, I think, is 36. So the streak's at 36. Has the streak become a thing now? I don't see how it couldn't be a thing. I guess you could give me coach speak and say that the streak's not a big thing, but that's got to be something that's now snowballing, rolling down the hill as something people are looking at.
So it's a thing. There's no doubt. I mean, we're not superstitious about it or anything, but it's definitely a thing. It's not. It wasn't, and it probably wouldn't have been this year had there been a conference tournament and an NCAA tournament. I think it kind of took the place of those things and our guys and giving them something to kind of drive towards this year and motivate them, other than just winning a basketball game. It was like that little extra kind of, and I give them credit. They were willing to put it out there. They don't think like that. It's not people. You get the phone calls of people who are, hey, why don't you just schedule some easy ones, just pick up some wins. And our guys are like, let's go play Macon, let's go play Tryon, let's go play whoever will play us. We want to play as many games as we can. They didn't care at all. I mean, they want to keep winning games, but they didn't care how they had to do it. And, they certainly were willing to put it out there. I think it became a thing because the media made it a thing. And there's no doubt there's it, especially for our program, when it puts us in that national spotlight, which is not somewhere we're often used to being. But it's it's something we want to keep it going, and if not for any reason other than we're always looking to win the next game we play.
Well, I can tell you as an Illinois Wesleyan fan, Coach, that I hope you guys have a great November and great December, because I want to roll into that gym next year. I want to see the streak. I want it all on the line in that basketball game. So we got a long way to go to get to that point.
Well, we have the same goal then for that game, because I would love to be right there.
There will be no bigger Yeshiva fan than me for the opening months of that season. Boy, would that be fun. It'll be fun either way. But tell you what, I really appreciate this, Elliot. You have been awesome, and I give you a lot of kudos for your attempts to schedule games, to play anybody who will play you. I know that that hasn't been an easy thing, the better you've gotten. And to have a kid on your team that probably could play high major Division I think there's some schools out there that aren't thrilled about signing up to play you. But kudos for looking for those games. The more you look, the more they'll come. And it's been great getting to know you a little bit, having some fun conversation on Twitter. I've seen you on Dave McHugh's show on Hoopsville. You've been awesome on there. And I'll give you any last words. There's going to be a lot of people. I know anytime there's something yeshiva related, your fans will get this thing flying all over the place. Kudos to them. So there'll be a lot of people listening to this. What would you like to say to anyone listening here as we conclude?
So these one is obviously thank you and all the guys who are kind of in that crew that give us a platform. But what I really want to say, and something that I've been trying to put on my social media in general over the last few years, I think it's very, very important that in the world we're living in today, where there's unfortunately this amount of hate and racism and bias, and we've seen it across a lot of different platforms and a lot of different races and religions. We've seen it recently in the Asian community, where there was an attack a couple of days ago. We've seen it, of course, in the Black community. We've seen it in the Jewish community over few years as well. To me, athletes are always role models, whether it's right or wrong. It's always the athletes, whether it's the NBA or major league, that are looked up to. And if you start to go down towards the college level, or even the high school or middle school level, athletes are the more popular kids. It's just right or wrong, kind of the nature of the beast, and it is what it is. But it's also an opportunity to lead. And to me, I will forever try to call out our athletes at the Division III level, or at any level for that matter, that might be tuning in and listening to the words that we occasionally throw out there, whether it's on a platform or on social media. Be a leader. Find a way to step up, find a way to do the right thing, find a way to be inclusive instead of exclusive. We had a great experience a couple weeks ago when we played at Stevens, where they went and played the Israeli national anthem before the game, and it was completely unprompted and unnecessary, frankly. But it was just such a step towards inclusion. It was not just tolerance, which is important. Tolerance is important, but we need to, as a society and as leaders in society, take that next step towards inclusion. And to me, what they did was exactly that. That was leadership from Stevens program and from their men's basketball team, by taking that next step. And I guess I'm just kind of hopeful that we can kind of continue to push that thought process out into the world of athletics and bridge those gaps between the different communities that exist, and eventually see levels of hate and violence and racism kind of start to fade away.
It's very well said. We've had a really rough last year across many fronts, and racism being one of the big ones. And I can't say it any better than you just did. Is hopefully student athletes can be part of that solution, and I think they can, and I think they will. And I think, like a lot of things, I think Division III athletes will be the ones that lead the way in that regard. And so I'm glad you said that. I appreciate that. Elliot, it's been great to meet you for the first time outside
Likewise.
of Twitter and all of that stuff. This has been a lot of fun. Let's do this again for sure. Maybe next year when we get closer to the season, we can talk about things and talk about your schedule. And we got to find out if your 6'6" guy's returning or not. I know he has a difficult decision, and we wish him the best, whatever he decides. But thank you so much, and good luck to you, Elliot.
Thank you. I appreciate it.